A man can regret many things in life, but I never thought I'd regret an old pocket watch. I found it while cleaning out my shed, buried beneath a pile of dusty newspapers, wedged between an old fishing reel and a shoebox full of mismatched buttons. The moment my fingers brushed against the cool brass surface, a strange feeling crept over me, like a door to the past swinging open, uninvited. I pulled it out, turning it over in my hands. The watch was heavier than I remembered, its once polished cover now tarnished, scratches tracing lines like wrinkles on an old face. The chain was still tangled, a mess of forgotten knots. My heart did an uneasy little flip. I knew this watch, and worse, I knew exactly how it had ended up here. I sank down onto an old wooden crate, my legs suddenly feeling weaker than they should. The shed smelled of sawdust and oil, but all I could smell was memory, the scent of a summer long gone, thick with adventure, foolishness, and the kind of regret that lingers for decades. I was 17 again. It was the summer of 1968, and I was just another reckless kid in our little Illinois town. Tommy Bishop and I were inseparable back then, two idiots always looking for trouble. We weren't bad kids, just young, stupid. One afternoon, we found ourselves outside Walter Parker's watch repair shop. He was an older man, quiet, always tinkering away with clocks and watches behind the counter. The place smelled like brass and time itself. "That old guy doesn't even notice what's right in front of him," Tommy had whispered with a grin. "Bet you couldn't snatch something and walk out clean." I don't know why I did it. Maybe to impress Tommy, maybe just to prove that I could. I walked in, pretended to browse, and when Walter turned his back, my hand closed around a pocket watch. It was easy. Too easy. I slipped it into my jacket and strolled out, my heart pounding so hard I could barely hear Tommy's quiet laugh. For days, I kept expecting the police to knock on my door. But no one ever came. Walter never said a word. And I was too ashamed to go back. I shoved the watch into a box and buried it under the weight of time. And now here it was, staring back at me after all these years. I swallowed hard. Walter was long gone, but his shop still stood, now run by his son Mark. I had carried this mistake for 55 years. Maybe it was time to set things right. The next morning, I slid the watch into my pocket and drove into town. The streets were familiar but different, as if time had rearranged things just enough to make me feel like a visitor. The old diner was now a trendy coffee shop, the drugstore sold vitamins promising eternal youth, and the gas station had one of those self-serve espresso machines I wouldn't trust in a million years. But Walter's shop, it stood frozen in time. The wooden sign, though faded, still hung above the door. The same brass bell jingled as I stepped inside. The air smelled of aged leather and clock oil, just as I remembered. A man in his 40s stood behind the counter, adjusting a pair of glasses on his nose. He had his father's eyes. I recognized them instantly. "Morning," he greeted, giving me a polite nod. "Can I help you with something?" I hesitated for half a second before reaching into my pocket. My fingers brushed the cool metal, and for a brief moment, I considered walking right back out. Instead, I placed the watch on the counter. Mark's eyes widened. He reached out but didn't pick it up right away, just stared at it like he was seeing a ghost. "Where did you get this?" His voice was careful, measured. I cleared my throat. I found it while cleaning out some old things." It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't exactly the truth either. Mark finally lifted the watch, turning it over in his hands. His fingers traced the engravings, his lips parting slightly in surprise. "This belonged to my father," he murmured. "He searched for it for years." I felt a sharp pang in my chest. So Walter had noticed. And he'd never stopped wondering. Mark glanced up at me, something unreadable in his expression. "I don't understand. Why would you have it?" There it was. The moment of truth. I forced myself to meet his gaze. "Because I took it." The words felt heavy, like lead rolling off my tongue. Mark's eyebrows pulled together. "You took it?" I nodded slowly. "I was a stupid kid. It was a dare. I never even used it, just kept it hidden away." I sighed. "I don't know if an apology means anything after all this time, but I am sorry." Mark was silent. His fingers rested on the watch, but his eyes were somewhere else, maybe back in his childhood, in the moments when his father had mentioned this watch, wondering where it had gone. Then, to my absolute shock, he let out a small laugh. I blinked. That's not the reaction I expected. Mark shook his head, a strange smile playing on his lips. My dad always said this watch would find its way back. I thought it was just one of his sentimental ramblings. He glanced down at the object in his hand. Looks like he was right. He pressed a small latch on the side, and the watch popped open. Inside, nestled beneath the delicate gears, was a small folded piece of paper. The edges were frayed with age. My breath caught as he carefully unfolded it. The handwriting was old but steady. A single sentence was scrawled across the page. Mark, if you're reading this, it means the watch found its way back to you. And if the watch found its way back, then so will you. Mark's fingers tightened around the note. His jaw clenched, his throat moving as he swallowed hard. He wrote this for me, he whispered. I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just an old stolen watch. This was a message, a bridge between past and present, between father and son. And somehow, by some twist of fate, I had been the one to bring it home. Mark stared at the note, his fingers tracing the edges of the aged paper, as if he were afraid it might crumble in his hands. The shop, usually filled with the rhythmic ticking of clocks, felt unnervingly silent. I could see his throat move as he swallowed hard, blinking a few times as though trying to make sense of it all. My father wrote this? He murmured, almost to himself. I nodded, though I knew he wasn't really asking me. He was asking the past. For a long time, he didn't say anything. He just stood there, staring at the words, lost in whatever emotions were stirring inside him. And I stood frozen, unsure whether I had just given him a gift or ripped open an old wound. Finally, he took a shaky breath and looked up at me. His eyes, so similar to Walter's, held something I couldn't quite name. Where exactly did you say you found this again? I felt my stomach tighten. Here it was, the moment I had been dreading. I had two choices. I could keep the lie, let him believe I had stumbled upon the watch like some forgotten relic, or I could tell the truth, the whole, ugly, shameful truth. I inhaled deeply. I was too old for lies. Mark, I said, my voice quieter than I meant it to be, I need to tell you something. His brows furrowed slightly, waiting. I cleared my throat. I didn't just find this watch in my house. Not exactly. The silence stretched. I stole it, I admitted. When I was 17. It was a stupid, reckless thing to do. A dare, really. I didn't even want it, I just took it. And then, when I realized what I'd done, I was too ashamed to ever bring it back. Mark didn't say anything. His expression didn't change at first, and that was somehow worse than if he'd immediately yelled or cursed or thrown the watch across the room. His fingers tightened slightly around the note. I braced myself. Then, to my utter confusion, he laughed. Not a small chuckle. Not an awkward, forced laugh. A real laugh. Deep, genuine, and unexpected. I blinked. Ah. That's not quite the reaction I was expecting. Mark shook his head, wiping at his eyes, still grinning. James, you don't understand. My father never got mad about losing this watch. He never once complained about it being stolen. Instead, he always told me, one day that watch will come back to you, and when it does, you'll understand what I mean. I thought he was just being sentimental, but now, he let out another laugh. Now I see he was just waiting for you to bring it home. I let out a slow breath. So you're not mad? Mark smirked. Oh, I'm mad. You stole from my dad, James. But at the same time, I kind of love that the only theft you ever committed ended up delivering me the one thing I didn't know I needed. I exhaled, shaking my head. Well, if I'd known my life of crime would have such a poetic ending, I might have stolen something more valuable. Mark chuckled. Nah, this is exactly how it was supposed to happen. His fingers brushed over the note again, and his expression softened. I spent years thinking I disappointed him. I never wanted to follow in his footsteps. Didn't want to be a watchmaker. I thought he resented me for it. His eyes flickered back to the note. But he believed in me all along. I nodded. Sometimes we don't realize how much people love us until we see it in writing. Mark smiled faintly. Yeah, and sometimes, time has a funny way of fixing things. And for the first time in 55 years, I felt lighter. A few days later, Mark called me. I want to do something, he said over the phone. Something to honor my dad. I leaned back in my chair, watching the early morning light spill across my front porch. What did you have in mind? I want to fix the watch and give it to you. I nearly dropped my coffee. Wait, what? Mark chuckled. James, it's been broken for years. My dad never fixed it, maybe because he always believed it wasn't time yet. But now I think it's right. He always said the watch would come back when it was supposed to, and you're the one who brought it home. I opened my mouth to argue, but nothing came out. I had spent my whole life carrying the weight of this mistake. The guilt, the regret. I had come to return the watch, hoping to finally let it go, but now it was being offered back to me. Not as stolen property, not as a burden, but as something earned. Mark, I don't know what to say. Say yes, he said simply. Because I think my dad would have wanted it that way. I let out a breath. Then finally I nodded. All right. Yes. The next week, I returned to the shop. Mark had done an incredible job, polishing the brass, adjusting the mechanisms, making the old timepiece look almost brand new. He placed it in my hand with a grin. There. Now it's officially yours. No theft involved this time. I chuckled. Good. I'm getting too old for a life of crime. We shared a laugh, but there was something deeper in the exchange. An understanding. A connection neither of us had expected. I ran my fingers over the smooth, polished cover, feeling the weight of it. Not just the weight of the watch itself, but the history it carried. The lesson it had taught me. As I left the shop that day, I glanced down at the watch again. It ticked steadily, a quiet but constant reminder. Of time, of choices, of second chances. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was running from my past. I felt like I had finally caught up to it.